Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of our 2Connect program podcast. Again, my name is Paolo. I'm the program assistant for 2Connect, and I'm joined here with one of our 2XL mentors. So if you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Destiny. I'm a third-year poli-sci major with a minor in EDS, and I'm really excited to be here to share some tips on studying abroad in my own experience.
Yes. So again, today we are talking about study abroad in hopes that you come away from this with some tips, some experiences, any resources that we have used as students in our own experiences with studying abroad. Of course, we don't have all the information, but we can share only on what we know. So that's just a little disclaimer. Like, it's not going to be a comprehensive podcast on everything, but it is what we do know and what we have experienced with our own experiences. So I guess just to get started, if you wanted to, give us any background of any programs you've done and how you went about that.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to go with Oasis to Cuba twice. So I went the first time that they ever planned it out and the second time because I just loved it so much. And the first time it was a week-long trip in Cuba, and so we took a course during winter quarter, and then during spring break had the following portion of the course, which was actually going to Cuba and taking courses there. And it was a similar process for the second trip, only that we did it in the summer, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was the other way around, but it was one in the spring and one in the summer. So that was really exciting. And we didn't have a very focused topic for our classes, but it was general Cuban history. So one day we would learn about the healthcare system, another day about the education system, and so on. And it was pretty exciting. We actually were taught by a Cuban professor there, so that was really cool. And that's it for now, but it was really exciting.
Yeah. And so for me, when I was a student, I was able to do the global seminar. So those are pretty much in the summer. It's like either session 1, session 2. Usually it's only like a 5-week program. For me, it was during session 2, and I went to Parma, Italy, to study cognitive science. So we did the mirror neuron systems for one class, and then drugs and its effect on behavior on the other class. And in that time, I think for me, what kind of pushed me to want to do study abroad was, just the concept of everyone being like, oh, make sure you do that. Like it's one of those once in a lifetime, you never really get to study abroad unless you're like in college sometimes.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to take advantage of that. But for me, not knowing how that would integrate into me being a bio major, I ended up picking up a cognitive science minor anyway, so it went towards the minor. But of course, there are other kinds of programs that do align with specific majors per se. So I think what I did learn through my process of going to the study abroad office was seeing that it's not just GEs that they have. You can also find programs that work with your major or your if there's a specific country you want to go to, there's different ways of going about that. So I guess do you know of any other programs that they offer, stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different programs, and I went to the office a lot of times this year, and they have booklets everywhere. So I once you walk in, there's an area to the left side, and they have a bunch of different tabs with different majors and the places you can go to for that major. So I immediately went to the political science one and the education studies one and found a ton. And there was a program I really wanted to do in Brazil. But as an RA, I wasn't able to because I can't study abroad during the school year. But I was already starting to look at it, to think about it ahead of time, because I still want to do that for my following year. So I definitely recommend going in early and speaking with one of the counselors. And if you have a general idea of what area you want to go to, they'll assign you to a specific counselor that is pretty experienced in that area, and they'll give feedback in that sense. And it's really helpful to go and speak with them, and they're very realistic about things. So I saw a certain price for a trip, and I was like, I mean, it looks expensive, but maybe it's doable. And once I spoke to the counselor, they were like, that's on the expensive side. Maybe we can find a program that's more doable. So it is helpful to talk to them and get that feedback. And you can also search online, like UCEAP, and then put what you want to study. Or as a UCSD student, we're able to do UC programs from all the UCs. So that's really cool, too.
Yeah, and I think, in talking about finances, what were some of the resources that you knew of, or scholarships and search engines you had for finding funding for studying abroad? Yeah,
so I had to be really disciplined with my money, and that can be a challenge for me sometimes. But I was working at the time. I was working with HDH, and so as soon as I knew I wanted to study abroad with Oasis, I immediately started calculating how much I would have to work and how much money I would have. So I literally sat down, wrote down how much I get paid per hour, how many hours I expected to work, and calculated all of that so I would know how much I would have saved by the time I went to go study. And from there, I was able to say, okay, this amount I can use for personal stuff or expenses, and this amount I have to save. So I would just send it directly to my savings account, and I was playing no games because I wanted to make sure that was covered. I didn't want to go and be stressed like, okay, I still got to get back and pay all this money, and I don't have enough. So I definitely recommend trying to plan that out ahead of time and calculating if you are working and able to get money some way, calculate that out. And there's a lot of scholarships too, and there's a lot of deadlines for them. And I also asked about that when I went to the study abroad office, and they gave me a whole list. It's like a sheet that they have with a bunch of different lists on different scholarships you can apply for. And depending on where you're going or what type of program you're doing, there's different ones. So that's helpful. The deadlines are very strict, so make sure you're getting those covered. And I do recommend going to the workshops. They have workshops at the study abroad office for writing scholarship applications, and those are really helpful too, because you'd get counseling and be able to edit certain things to make sure you're the best candidate possible for getting that money to pay for studying abroad. And I believe you do get financial aid, so if you get grant money or any loans like that, that helps out, but definitely go for scholarships. And you can also go to different writing resources on campus to get feedback on that.
Yeah, and I think for me, especially since it was in the summer, you do get like the UC, and since the global seminars are a UC-led class, it is a UCSD professor that you go with. It's a UCSD course, so they easily go onto your academic history and your degree audit as a UCSD class, which I think for me was really beneficial since I was already going into my fourth year. Helped me kind of just like, instead of having to run around like, oh, here's this form to get it petitioned for this and all these things, just for me and my timeline of what I was hoping to get done, it was a lot easier to do the summer global seminars. And they do have scholarships for that, whether that's within each college has their own scholarship process, or the overall UCSD kind of, I think it's like the Gilman Scholarship, something like that. And all of this like information about scholarships you can find on the Study Abroad website. There's like a specific tab for it. It's like if you go to Get Started, and then there's the Finances tab. So yeah, and I think that's what was really important to share, is that sometimes it does take a lot of discipline, is that if this is something you want to do, like really sitting down and thinking about like long term, like right now it's hard to save money, but when you do come to the time of studying abroad, having that extra funds, whether it is to pay for like food when you're out there or souvenirs, like the little monies that you put aside really count in the long run. So I guess like, and speaking on like that timeline of preparation, what did your timeline look like in terms of going to the office for the first time and following up in all your applications and stuff?
So with Oasis, it was a different process. We took the class ahead of time and got our credit. And so it was like an additional component to the class with going on the trip. And so we didn't necessarily have to transfer any credits or anything. And when I was doing the process to study abroad this year, I had to go to the office and get a certain form. And I don't remember the name right now. But it's basically a form. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit. So you get another form, and that's the one you would take to your department or wherever you would want to get credit for the courses. So I was planning on taking poli-sci classes. So I went to my department and had to take copies of the syllabus for each class and write down the information for the class on the actual form. And so once you go to the study abroad office, they would tell you which form that is. But you write all the information, you go, and hopefully they approve it and see if you would get credit for it. And they get a copy of it for their own records, and then I would use that to fill out the information for the registration office. And from there, they would send you whether they approve it or not, and you would get a better idea going forward. So there's a lot of forms to fill out and a lot of departments to go to make sure you're going to get your course credits. If that's not a concern, then that's fine. But if it is a concern and you want to get your credits for the courses you're taking, then I definitely recommend putting in the effort to take those steps and making sure you're getting that covered. And ask all the questions you need to ask. And it can get a little overwhelming with all the forms and having to go to the offices, but make sure you're understanding what you have to do and meeting the deadlines. And I believe with the form you send to the registration office, you only get one shot. So you have to make sure that the classes you have listed are realistic, and you're hopefully going to do that program for sure, and the classes are ones you can get credit for. So just be mindful of that, because they do get a lot of applications, I believe. So it's just like one and done.
Yeah. So I think that's also something to think about when looking into your research of what programs you want to do, seeing how the syllabus aligns with what you're supposed to be taking with your major, or even with GEs. I think a lot of people often use their GEs as opportunities to study abroad as well. So seeing how, whether it is like I think it's easier when it is like a UCEAP, which is UC Education Abroad. Yeah. And then the global seminars, because they are UC classes. But sometimes with the other programs that are outside of those specific UC programs, it takes a lot of paperwork and like figuring out petitions of whether it will count towards course credit or not, and then whether you'll get into that class or not, and then backups and stuff like that. So really thinking about like what kind of backup plans you would have, and like that's why there are a lot of the advisors in the programs study abroad offices to help you kind of figure out what's the best situation for you. They would help you assess what classes you need to take and kind of see what aligns with your needs and your wants, because sometimes we don't always get what we want in terms of the program we want, but it's what aligns best with the classes we take. And then they would work with you to kind of find what does work, and then especially with financial, sometimes that is a burden or like a barrier for people. So like knowing what kind of resources there are, and they would like show you like you said, that paper that has all the scholarships, deadlines, and making sure that you're on top of it if that's something you really wanted to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing to keep in mind is each program is a little bit different in the way they do things. So you should definitely look at the small details. So if you do happen to miss a day, what does that mean? There's some programs where it's like if you miss a day, your grade drops, I don't know what percentage. There's other programs that will send your transcript over to your home school, and there's programs that won't, which means you would have to get that taken care of. And what does that mean if it's a country that you might not have that much access to and you need to request your transcript? So being mindful of that is really important. And also look at the weather. That was a really big thing for me, because I wanted to go to Brazil, and the time I was trying to go was their winter. And so I really like sunny weather, and I'm really affected by gloomy weather or cold weather. So I was like, that's not going to work. Like, I want to go when it's sunny and it's really nice. And Brazil being such a large country, the southern part was going to be a lot colder than the northern part. And so there were different programs in the different cities. So considering that and making sure you're doing your homework, and if it's a country where you don't speak the native language, you can kind of try to look for information to see if it will be accessible and if there will be people that speak the languages that you speak. And if you want to be totally immersed in it, then go for it and try to learn that language. Just be mindful of those little details when planning on studying abroad somewhere. And also thinking about communication. And if you can try to speak with your carrier ahead of time to know what service is going to be like. I didn't have service when I went to Cuba, and my family was tripping. They were like, you didn't call us? Like, we didn't even know you landed. So plan ahead of time. When I went the second time, I was like, look, I don't have service out there. So when I do get an opportunity to contact you, I will. But just know that I might not be able to as soon as y'all would like to. And being very transparent about that is important, too, with any loved ones that you would have here that would be concerned. And if you don't have service in that country, try to plan with friends. Hey, we'll meet at this time, or if you do go somewhere, have a game plan for how things would go, just in case.
And I think something that I've heard from other friends is like they didn't apply because they didn't have friends that were going to be on there. They were afraid of being alone in a country that they were like unfamiliar with. That's a very valid concern. I do think it is important to be mindful of your safety when you're like studying abroad as well, but also trusting that like the programs that you do, you're gonna make friends. I feel because I think I had a friend that went to one study abroad out in Japan, and being friends with people from different countries, even because they're doing different programs there as well. I think you won't always feel alone. I mean, there might be moments where like it's nice to wander and like, but being safe obviously, but trusting that if you're going to do a program with like other students, like you're there for school as well. Like I think knowing that your primary purpose in studying abroad would of course hopefully be to get the academic portion out, and then the plus side would be the whole cultural experience of a different country. But since you are going through the academic rigor with other students, you're going to make friends, like studying together, being in a different country where maybe they might not speak the language either, and you'll be struggling together. Makes it fun, and I think it's like a good experience that I think for me, I'm really glad that I took the opportunity to and would do again. Like 12 out of 10 would do again. But yeah.
Okay. My friend just went to South Korea during our fall quarter, so she went for an entire semester and she loved it. And she planned it all out. She went on her own, and by the end of the program, she ended up making really good friends.
Yeah.
So she was on the phone with this friend over the weekend watching the billboards with the K-pop group. So you can develop connections with people that are in other parts of the country, and it's really exciting. And for me, I went with some friends when I went to Cuba, but I also ended up making friendships with people that I never spoke with before, and so I can see them on campus and be like, hey, you know. So it ends up working out, and obviously consider what that means to be going with people that you don't know before or ahead of time. But be open-minded about it and understand that something can develop there. And like you said, it is a school program. Like they should have programs planned out that kind of ease that whole like community building process.
But I think other than that, do you have any other tips, tricks, final words?
I say a lot of people are really concerned with like, oh, well, if I go to study abroad, I'm not going to have time to graduate in 4 years or something. So if that's a concern and you really want to study abroad, I highly recommend it. For me, it gave me a lot of energy, and it really encouraged my retention on campus because I struggled my first and second year with wanting to continue staying here. So having that in the back of my head or the back of my mind, like, oh, I can study abroad though. It's like, let's keep it going. You know, it's a travel opportunity. And that has changed with time, but I definitely think it impacted my retention. And so if it's a small idea that's there, I say look into it and see if it's attainable and what the money looks like, what the whole process, what being there would be like, and just go for it. It can be a little scary, but I highly recommend it. And I think, like, when else are we going to be able to travel somewhere and get credit for it at the same time? And I've heard some people say that studying abroad was actually a little cheaper than if they were to still live on campus and go to school here for whatever quarter it was. So keep that in mind. And another thing is a lot of schools tend to be on the semester system. So what are the pros and cons to doing it the semester during our fall quarter or the semester of our winter and spring quarter? Because then we miss 2 quarters, but we get a semester abroad, or you miss 1 quarter and get a semester abroad. So be mindful of that if you are interested in like how many classes you still need to take to graduate in the time that you want. And I'm considering taking an extra year, a 5th year, to study abroad. So don't shy away from an opportunity like that. If you can get an experience to travel somewhere. Those are my last minute tips.
Great. Honestly, like I was going to say the same thing. I think also in terms of finances, like, you know, they would work with you to kind of see what resources you would have available. I know I did like a crowdfunding thing, like with a GoFundMe or the other one, I don't remember what I used, but one of those like things to ask family that don't live nearby if they would be willing to donate and stuff like that. I know it's like for me, like it was a little bit of like my pride being like, I don't want to ask for help, but it really meant something to me to be able to study abroad. So knowing like the different resources you have available, like someone, I think when I met with one of the advisors at the study abroad office, like they want you to study abroad, you know, they want to make it available to you because not everyone has that opportunity. And like having greater numbers of people in the university that studied abroad is like looks a lot better, so they would want to like help you find the funding as well. So not shying away from it and just really taking that opportunity to like let yourself explore the world.
Of
you know,
course,
because it's there's a lot to see, and I think having it as an opportunity to get credit for being out there would be really cool.
Definitely. And I also want to share one more thing.
No, of course.
I came from a family where traveling was just not something we did, and we struggled with a lot of money, and so having extra money to be like, oh, let's take a vacation somewhere was not a reality for us. And so my first time hearing that Oasis was going to go to Cuba, I was like, oh, I gotta go. My family's from Cuba, so it meant a lot to me to be able to experience my own culture in that way. And I went the first time with Oasis, the second time with Oasis, and last summer I told my cousins, I was like, look, I made it work. We can make it work. Like, let's try to plan a trip for this summer. So that was our first time going, and we were able to meet my great grandma and do really beautiful things.
That's great.
And once I studied abroad or traveled for the first time, it was like, I'm really out here. I'm about to do this as much as I can. And I actually just helped out with the whole process, and my mom and I are going next month. So it's going to be her first time ever traveling like that. And so it only took that one time to kind of believe in myself, believe in Oasis and the whole process with everything, to continue this whole pattern of traveling. And so it's really exciting. So if you've never traveled before and it can be scary, just take that first move and hope that it'll work out.
Yeah, and I think it will.
I
think, even if like you're afraid, like, you know, talking out those concerns with an advisor and like seeing like how you can address those issues before you leave, so that you're not out there like, you know, I think just like not being afraid to ask for help, I think, is the overall thing for me as well. So,
definitely, yeah.
But yeah, so I think I want to thank you again for sharing your experiences and your knowledge and your everything about study abroad. So just to like let you remind you all that the study abroad office is in Matthews Quad, so out by behind the Student Services Center building. It's that little brown building. It's open Monday to Fridays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And a lot of their information is on the website, which is studyabroad.ucsd.edu. You can go there to find information about finances, where to get started, different programs and stuff like that, calendar of events and stuff. So definitely checking out their website if you are even remotely interested in studying abroad. Other reminders, just a reminder that the drop-in mentoring is still accessible. You can sign up via bit.ly/2connect-drop-in, as well as looking at our newsletter for any other events and the link to the drop-in mentoring as well. And if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to email us at 2Connect. That's the number 2connect.ucsd@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.